get started momentarily. But in the meantime, if you have questions, you can type them in the Q&A or you can type them in the chat. We'll answer either or both.
So perhaps you should explain, Bob, where you are, because we see a bed.
Yes. All right. Well, we'll get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first Friday Ask Me Anything. Glad to be joining everyone again. Yes, I'm in Philadelphia for a board meeting, and so I am multitasking today, and which means I will be leaving a little bit early, and I'm going to leave it to Laurel and Karen to carry on, so I can get to my meeting. So we had some good questions already that people have typed in. I don't know. I guess why don't we start with that? That sound good?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So we have a question. I'm working with a small but mighty theater with limited financial and human resources. Our $5 million comprehensive campaign stands at $2.5 million, and it's time to expand our volunteer solicitor pool and continue identification cultivation of the next tier of donors. We will not have any live theater until January 2022 at the earliest, and we are not in a position to create not in a position to create a lot of digital content. One-on-one Zoom meetings are taking place and providing important information, but they don't offer the community energy that draws so many to the theater. Any engagement ideas during this period? Right. Good question. What do you guys think?
Well, so again, I mean, I'll just one that kind of popped into my head just randomly as I read this question before we jumped on. I think about, again, Zoom is kind of our tool, our primary tool right now when we can't meet in person, and it sounds like you're already doing one-on-ones, but I'm curious what kinds of group type Zoom things you've done, and especially with theater, like it would be, I don't know, I'm curious about, like, could you do like live readings? Like, could you take a just like one scene or part of a play and like invite people to do like a Zoom reading or something? I don't know, like it seems like there could be some opportunities there to actually even get people who aren't usually the actors, who are usually the audience members, maybe give them some opportunities to be the actors, but in a safe space like a Zoom. So I guess I would maybe explore some of the group Zoom opportunities, either opportunities for people to just come together and talk about why they love your theater so much, or just opportunities to get together and be creative. So that was something I thought of.
I love that. And also the last line that you said, opportunities to say why they love the theater. I participated in a Zoom meeting. I'm on a board, and we had a board meeting trying to cultivate and engage new people, just like a small not-for-profit here in Florida. And what we did was we had a little warm up where people told about their first jobs. We just had people tell us about your first job experience. And then people did that just to get to know people. So it was funny and easy. And then we said, we'd like to hear why you care, and several board members were on. So the board members started, here's why I love Easter seals. And then the different people sitting there told amazing stories. And then we just wrapped it up by saying, we're going to be calling you personally after this and being in touch. And we'd really like to talk to you about what's going on. And it was just a lovely 1 hour get together. And we had a little video too. We did a little video.
Yeah.
Yep. Those are great answers. My first thought was like a table read. I know for my PTA back in the day, we would do table reads. Sometimes we were able to get celebrities, sometimes not, but it was always fun. And it was always an interesting, engaging way of bringing theater in a low cost, easy to do kind of way. And then, you can always talk about vision. Since you're prospecting, you can always talk about vision and do, parlor meeting, vision meeting. I think like a lot of our clients have been very successful doing prospecting through just doing vision meetings. I think Zoom lends itself very well to those kind of group meetings where you have an engaging conversation about what the theater is going to be doing in 2022 and how things look, and are you going to make any changes based on COVID and just what does the landscape look like for the theater. So I think it's I think you have lots of options, and particularly as an arts organization. I think people, I've certainly watched lots of arts over COVID, and it's been cool and interesting. And I know even some organizations have broadcasts from their theater onto Zoom, so it was kind of COVID safe, but I know you guys are putting things together, but maybe there's some finding a space to do something like that might be interesting as well.
Yeah, people, I've seen a couple of plays that people did in pop-up stores, a little pop-up store, and they do a really short play, and the people are outside, watching, looking through the glass, and then you can always have, it's hard to have conversation immediately after that, but it could be followed by, come gather with us to have a discussion about. The one last thing I just want to say to this question, because I know we have other questions, is the importance of follow-up. So whatever you decide to do, end with, and we'll be in touch with you, and then follow up afterwards to have your conversations. You said you're trying to get more volunteers to help with, with the engagement. Whatever the due message is, make sure you deliver it and you follow up.
And I have one quick thing to add. One interesting new piece that is not new technology necessarily, but I'm interested just generally in terms of engagement are all of this technology that allows you to have watch parties. So, like on Amazon, it's built in, on Hulu, it's built in, on Disney Plus, it's built in. So if there are things that are of interest to, and this is true for anybody on this call, there are documentaries or shows or anything that would be of interest or tied to your mission, you could do like a watch party and have everybody come together and watch something together and be able to interact while they're watching all the same thing in their own spaces. So another, way to maybe make technology work for you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I could add to it, but I won't. We're going to move on to the next question. So we have Jennifer in the chat asking, we have a small shop, an institutionally related foundation for a public college. I serve as the executive director and CDO. I struggle with balancing my strategic role and also needing to be the technician that ranges from direct mail to major gifts. Any guiding principles you have found helpful when considering these priorities? So maybe I'll start, since a lot of my career was in small shops prior to joining the Osborne Group. I used to work at a small school in Harlem where I did everything from direct mail to run a major gift campaign that we were in. And I think for me, the priority was always keeping the donors that I had, and really making sure that I was stewarding the donors that I had, that wasn't a secondary or something I got to if I had time, that was really a priority, because it's hard enough to do prospecting as it is. And it's, as we know, it takes a lot more resources and time and money to get new donors. And so, just as a matter of efficiency, I really wanted to keep the donors that I had. So I spent a lot of time on that. And I think, it was also important for me to kind of arrange my day. So I would do like the things that were, brought in the real money during the day when I had high energy, so if I had to create anything, I would do it in the morning. If I needed to make calls and the like, I would do it in the afternoon. I still had good energy, but maybe not as much powerful thinking in the afternoon. And then I would always do direct mail, sort of towards the end of the day. And so that kind of worked for me. But I think overall, the principle I would say would be to really make sure that you retain the donors that you have and focus your energy on that. And that's almost always more valuable than doing any sort of, serious acquisition. But what do you guys think?
I just, I go back to just being super, super intentional and super, super strategic. And, you don't have time to be spending, time doing things that aren't high return on investment, really targeted toward what you're trying to achieve. And so I'm going to say the words I probably say on every Ask Us Anything. You've got to have a table of gifts. You've got to know exactly how much you've got to raise, how much, where that, how many gifts at every level, how many prospects you need, and then let that dictate the strategies that you invest your time in. I think, again, too many organizations start with tactics because, and they do the planning of like, this is what we did last year. Let's just redo the calendar this year, and whether or not those were the right things to be doing. I think starting with your table of gifts, starting with what you have to raise, and then working your tactics in toward that goal is always going to make you feel like you're spending your time on the things that are most relevant, highest return on investment, actually getting you to hit your goals versus just kind of willy-nilly doing things because you've always done them. That's my one piece of advice.
And I would just add two things to that. Agree with both of those things. One of the things that I learned from Bob's experience in a small shop, because I grew up in big shops, a department for this and a department for that. And he was all the departments. And one of the things he said to me was how important it was for him to have volunteers as force multipliers, because it was only him. And so it was so critical to him that he had a group of volunteers. And so I think you spent it's a good part of your strategic time managing their volunteer pools, if I'm remembering.
Yes, that is true.
Correctly. And the other thing that I often hear Laurel say, and I thought she was going to say that just right this moment, is that not only do you have to have your table of gifts, but you have to have your plan. We know that without a plan, and if you need a resource, if you need some help with that, we have resources that we can send you, but you got to have a plan. You need it more than anybody needs it because of all the reasons Bob and Laurel said. You can't afford to lose anybody. You have to stay focused on the high priority things. Your table of gifts is part of that plan, but you need the rest of that written plan so that you're always focused. And then it allows you to say no to the things that are not going to get you where you have reason to say, well, no, I can't do that because.
Yeah.
All right, great answers. All right, so we have another question that I think was for this. It wasn't totally clear to me, but we're going to answer it. We're going to answer it anyway. I've been working with one of our development staff who's interested in learning how to write grants. She contacted a newly researched foundation, and when she introduced herself from our organization, the person on the other end of the line hung up on her. I assured her that this usually doesn't happen, and foundations generally like to establish a relationship with nonprofits. Anyone else have this experience or worse?
I'm such a Pollyanna. Like I'm such an optimist. Like my first thought when I heard that question was like, there must have been something wrong with the phone. Like there's no way that person actually just
who would do that?
Who would do that? And who would do that? Not just because they're in a foundation, but just who would do that in general? Right? Just hang up on somebody. I agree that I don't think that's a common thing. Also, obviously, not having more context around the call or when it was made or anything, it's hard to kind of analyze why someone might have hung up the phone. But I think, I've not heard of that.
And if you're trying to help her learn something, I wouldn't start with a newly researched foundation. I would start with a friend. I would start with a foundation that cares about you and has been a friend, and perhaps you're hopeful that they will renew a grant, in 6 months, in 3 months, and you should introduce the young woman. You should make the call and say, hi, this is Karen from blah, blah. I have a new staff member, and I wonder if you could give her 20 minutes of your time. Just give her, or 15 minutes of her time. I'm trying to teach her how, and I wonder if you'd be willing. Now you're engaging and cultivating somebody, and you've made the introduction, so you've smoothed the way. For that new researched foundation, I think sending a new person is probably not the best approach. for a newly researched foundation. If you think that they have high potential, then that's a great time to try and have a high-level conversation between your CEO and that foundation leader, just to talk about the future. What are they thinking? Which direction, what are their future directions? Here's what, we read all your research, but we wanted to just understand what was behind that. And here's what we're thinking. And just having a more high-level conversation with a new foundation. And maybe the woman was having a bad day. What can I say?
I guess I'm much more cynical about these things.
This is why Bob and I are good. We're like point counterpoint.
Because my immediate thought was like, yeah, that I could see that maybe happening. Because I feel like foundations have become, maybe in recent times, they've kind of gone the other way. But I found over the course of my career that they've become much less accessible. Like, they're very clear in their guidelines about how you approach them and when you can approach them, and having to write letters of inquiry. And so, look, you shouldn't hang up on people, but it kind of, to me, sort of was indicative of maybe one of the larger problems of foundations in general. So I would say, I agree with Karen. But I would think if you do want to approach a foundation, I always send a letter of inquiry, whether that's something that they want or not, just to kind of introduce myself, let them know what we're doing, about our vision, get them excited. If I know that I'm going to eventually ask this person for something, I may even start a year or two early and just send them information. Hey, we're here. This is what we're doing. This is what we're up to. So that when I do make that phone call, and if it's cold, that they're more likely to take that call, and less likely to hang up. But no, I've never heard of anyone hanging up on anyone. So hopefully this isn't a trend. Hopefully this is kind of an outlier.
But that, Bob, your points actually remind me of something else that's really important. And Laurel kind of alluded to it. We don't know what the context was or what you said. I think that people who are working really hard, and especially during COVID, everybody's staff is less and stuff. And if that initial hello was, hi, I'm new and I'm from, hey, this is inappropriate. We have to remember that how we try to get an appointment has to sound purposeful and strategic and respectful of their time, and respectful of their jobs and the situation. So it's always good when you send that initial letter of inquiry, when you pick up that phone, that you come across as purposeful and strategic and knowledgeable.
Okay, so let's see. So I'm going to be leaving in about 3 minutes. So I think, Laurel, maybe you have one other, I think we got one other question, or no?
Yeah, we got a big question. So
before we go to that question, just a reminder, please type in whatever you'd like to ask. We still have around 10 minutes left. So please type in the chat. Please type it in the Q&A. I'm going to have to leave in a minute, but Laurel and Karen will carry on. Okay, so go ahead, Laurel.
Good. Well, so this is a big question, and it comes from an organization in the Texas Coastal Bend area, small area, not a lot of foundations, not a lot of big corporations. They're currently in the process of planning an early care and learning center to provide care for 150 young children. They have a lot of parent support. They have, done the research. They have a lot of data to support the value of the program to the community in terms of addressing high rates of poverty and child abuse, et cetera. They've made presentations to local government officials, commissioners, Chamber of Commerce. Everyone says it's a great idea and they're supportive of it, but they're not seeing any contributions of any size coming in. They need to raise 1.25 million. What do we recommend in terms of finding funding sources? While the local community is supportive, their pockets are not deep enough. So huge question, essentially like, how do I run a $1.25 million campaign? So I'm not sure if we're gonna, sorry, Diana, we may not get to the minutia of answering this question, but high level, Karen and Bob, I don't know, Bob, if you want to start since you have to leave, what your initial thoughts are.
I do have to leave in about one 1 minute, and it's a complicated question. So I probably don't have time to actually answer it. So I'm gonna kick it back to you guys. I'm gonna leave you with the tough one, but I know you'll handle it well. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you guys next month.
Great, thanks, Bob. All right, Karen, you unmute yourself. I'll let you kick this one off.
So the first thing, I've actually had folks have to build a donor base from scratch. And one of the best ways is to have issue discussions. Your mission sounds so wonderful. It sounds powerful. It sounds like you're really solving community problems. And when you have conversations that are not about, let me tell you about us and what we're doing, and we hope that you'll give us money. If you have conversations about, here's how we're tackling this community problem. Here's how we're tackling. What do you think about this community problem? What have you seen working? What don't you see working? And when you bring a mix of people together, when you ask people to host a conversation on Zoom, or if people are feeling more comfortable having, socially spaced in somebody's home again, having an issues-based conversation makes me feel comfortable inviting a variety of people to come. So maybe you feel like you don't know somebody with deep pockets, but you don't know who they know. You don't know, first of all, you don't really know how much money they have or don't have. And second of all, they know people and there are other people. So you've got to start having conversations to broaden that circle. That's one of the best ways to build a donor base. Laurel, what would you add?
Yeah, so I think too, I'm curious, Diane, because you did share that you've made presentations, you shared this with people. I think I go back to what Karen said in response to another question a little while ago, which is follow-up, right? Doing when you're in campaign and you have a lot of money to raise, we don't typically see major gifts being made because I saw a presentation and then I just was so inspired by the presentation that I'm going to write a big check, right? And so I go back to follow up and I think, okay, so all of those people who attended, all of those people who in those sessions told you that this was a really great idea and something that was going to be really great for the community, what then has been your follow up to then go back to them individually and say, okay, so I know you're behind this. I know you're excited. I know you think this is really important. Here's what it's going to take. It's going to take $1.25 million. Here's what we have raised so far. Here's what else. Here's what we still need. What can we count on you for, right? Or can we count on you for a gift of X, right? So I think if we want to get a major gift, we have to ask for a major gift, right? It's not just going to come because they kind of heard a presentation. But now a $50 gift might come because I heard a presentation and I think, oh, that Diane, she's great. I'm gonna give this $50, but I'm not gonna make a big major gift just from that kind of an engagement. So I guess I go back to follow up and then individualized solicitations to people based on both their capacity and what their interest to be.
The only thing that I would add to that is in between. So you made a presentation, hopefully you had a conversation, and that we're not just presenting, that it is truly a conversation where you ask them questions, not just Q&A at the end, but that you ask them questions. So there was a give and take. Remember, engagement is everything. And then the follow-up might not be a solicitation, depending on the size of the gift, right?
Yeah. So
if the gift is a relatively small gift, then that might be just the right thing. They were so enthusiastic, I'm going to ask them for that $10,000. But if you're looking for a major gift, then I think that follow-up has to be some kind of engagement opportunity. You could start with, what did you think? What did you think about the presentation? This is what we're trying to do. Here's how much money we're trying to raise. Here's how much money we have.
Who else do you know?
Who else do you know? What else could we do? Who else do you think would be interested in having this conversation? Solicitation should happen for a major gift when you believe that the person is ready to say yes, where they have looked at you and said, oh my goodness, I want to help. Oh my goodness, this is so important. Because then if you ask them for money and they say, oh no, I can't do that, you just can remind them what they said. You could say, I know that's a lot of money, I get it. But as you said, if we don't do this for the community, what's going to happen? So how do we make this work? Right? And you put the problem solving back on them. But if they haven't enthusiastically said, oh my goodness, this is great and I want to help, then you're probably not ready to ask them for that major gift, but certainly the smaller gifts.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, the one other thing too is I'm going to say it again. I'm such a broken record about this. Table of gifts, right? So I would imagine that you have a table of gifts. If you're in campaign and you're running a campaign, you probably have a table of gifts. Use it, right? Use it as a tool. And as you're talking to your board, as you're talking to your campaign committee, as you're having these follow-up conversations to ask people who they might know, have that table of gifts handy to say, and this is specifically the kinds of gifts we're looking for, right? Because again, I think if you just kind of say we have to raise 1.25 million, where is that money going to come from? That feels really nebulous. It feels really hard for me as just a volunteer or a board member to kind of wrap my head around, well, like how many gifts is that? What size of gifts are we looking for? But I think sharing that table of gifts and sharing those goals with the people who are trying to help you find all of these people who are going to need to support this campaign, I think gives some much needed and very helpful context around how many gifts we need, what size of gifts are we looking for. It becomes a much more directive conversation.
And the last thing I would just say about this, and it is a very big question that would take, lots of other support to help you think it all through. But the last thing that I would just say is one of the best things that I did with all of my volunteers and we help our clients do is help them learn how to listen and ask questions, not just pitch. There's a book called Ditch the Pitch. And we are no longer just like selling, and then are you going to buy it or not? We've got to make sure that we are engaging people in conversation. And the best way to do that is to ask questions. And you know that the Osborne Group has a great list of strategic questions that we make available for free to people. If you're not using your strategic questions and not helping your donors and your volunteers use them, you're really missing out on such an important and rewarding part of the process. Got to ask those questions. You got to get people involved in conversation and not just pitch. Will you help me?
Absolutely. Great. Well, I hope that was helpful. We probably have time for one more question. If anybody wants to put something in the Q&A or put something in the chat. And thank you, Jennifer, for sharing about Diane says, thank you. How can I access the strategic questions? You can actually, there is actually a, I'm pretty sure, I should look before I say this. I'm pretty sure you can download them in the tools and resources section of our website.
There is a generic set.
And there is, by the way, you can also download a table of gifts template there too, if any of you were inspired by my table of gifts talk today. So yeah, strategic questions and table of gifts and many other things can be found on the tools and resources section of our website. And as Karen said, we also have sample development plans and lots of other tools and templates. So if there's anything else that we mentioned today or anything else that you are looking for, please just shoot us an email and let us know. And if we could, and Jennifer, you're so helpful. Jennifer put the link right in the chat for us.
Thank you. And one other thing though, if you need, we also have tailored strategic questions for different kinds of organizations. So we might have one that's tied to exactly what you're doing. So just shoot us an email, just nice quick email and say, this is the kind of organization we are. Do you have strategic questions for this? And then we will send those right off to you.
And I'm just putting my Oops. And I just threw my email into the chat as well. If you want to email me directly, elmacombs@theosborngroup.com. And with that, I just want to thank everybody for joining us today, sending such good, robust, interesting questions. We will be back here next month, first Friday of the month. So keep an eye out for links to register for that. And we hope you'll join us again. And we hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much for coming.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.